Pastor Ronkelly put a video out yesterday. I gotta say, I'm very, very grateful that Pastor Ronkelly is speaking out publicly. He's no longer being silent on the issues. I think he's gotten to a point where, you know, like the Ecclesiastes says, it's the time to be quiet. There's also a time to speak. I think he's been Justin. Did you get a haircut? You're looking good, man. You came in here distracting everyone with that nice haircut.
Appreciate it, brother. Thank you. I did it
Anytime.
last night.
Oh, you did it. You see, saving money.
Yeah, I
That's
did it
it.
myself. Had to. Got to save money, brother.
See, yeah, getting ready for the time of trouble. 7-day Adventist. We anyway. Let me get back. I remember when Pastor Brian's son came on the screen. Everybody was distracted. I think Justin, you just got a little 10% of that yourself. So
that is funny.
yeah, when that Elder Brian's sons came on the street, we're like, oh my goodness, look at that hair. Everybody lost it. So yeah, we're gonna talk about Pastor Ronkelly's here, and he says the title of this one is "Due Process Denied: The Silencing of Conrad Vine." Pastor Ronkelly. All right, let's take a listen to the man.
The head of Homeland Security, Christy Neame, testified before a congressional. On May 20, the head of Homeland Security, Christy Neame, testified before a congressional panel. She was being interviewed to see what she knew about the right habeas corpus. It just so happened that a former Boston lawyer by the name of Maggie Hassan, a Democrat from New Hampshire, was quite keen on what the definition of habeas corpus meant and how it affected free societies. Christy Neame began to give a wrong definition, which seemed to be in support of some of the administrative actions of the current political administration in the White House. Hassan interrupted, saying, "That's incorrect." And she went on to say it's a legal principle that requires the government to provide public reason for detaining and imprisoning people. She also went on to say that habeas corpus is the foundational right that separates free societies like America from police states like North Korea. Lori Comstock, writing in USA Today on May 21, entitled her article, "Christy Neame Botches Habeas Corpus." The question I have for all my listeners is this: is habeas corpus a legitimate right in a free society, and does it have a spiritual corollary in the dynamics of the church? Not long ago, Conrad Vine was banned by the Michigan Conference. The problem was he was not there to defend, amend, apologize, or correct anything he might have said. The ban went out, creating a great degree of consternation. It led to some very traumatic actions in a large local church in the Michigan Conference. The Bible does address this. It says that every man seems right until you examine the other side. And of course, a very similar situation happened to Jesus in John chapter 7. He was preaching in the temple court, and the guards were sent to arrest him by the Sanhedrin. It was predetermined that what he was saying was wrong and hurtful to the church. The problem was that when the temple guards went, they were so impressed and so convicted that they left Jesus to preach. When they came back, the Sanhedrinists were very upset. And they said, "Are you deceived like the rest of the masses? Has anyone from the Sanhedrin considered this situation and come to the same conclusion as you temple guards?" Well, this was just a little too much for Nicodemus, who was under conviction. And while he wasn't quite ready to come out totally on the side of Jesus, he did speak up for due process. And he said, "Does our law judge a man without first hearing him?" Well, of course, that first hearing was not preaching. It was reference to judicial process. You see, friends, everyone does seem right until you examine it properly. And at the root of proper decision-making is proper dialogue, an investigation of facts. It would be sad if in the history of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, we somehow stumbled on due process. And the record books recorded bad decisions based on bad process. Some have said, why are we focusing so much on the process and not on what's been said? That's because we haven't all interpreted what's been said exactly the same way. And we haven't all agreed on the legitimacy of what's been said. So perhaps examining the facts and considering the motivations and considering an opportunity at redemption and clarification would be a proper step in the process of dealing with an ordained minister and a local elder. May God help us all to understand what habeas corpus means when it comes to the confining of rights and the restrictions of liberties, including preaching. God be with you all, and I hope you pray about what I've said.
The greatest one of the world is the word of man. Man who will not be bought or sold, Man who in their animal soul are true and honest, men who do not fear to call sin by his right name, men whose conscience is true to duty as the needle to the pole, men who will stand for the right though the heavens fall. All right. Who wants to take a stab at this thing?
Let me just start with a Spirit Prophecy quote. How's that?
Please do.
The Bible teaches us to beware of lightly bringing accusation against those whom God has called to act as his ambassadors. Against an elder, receive not an accusation, but before 2 or 3 witnesses. 1 Timothy 5:19. I'm going to stop right there for a second. This is the problem. This is the problem in the church. 1 Timothy 5:19 is not being followed hardly ever, especially when it comes to our administrations. I've seen it over and over and over again. They take something, just an accusation, one or two, but they don't investigate. You have to have evidence. If there is no evidence, true evidence, and to have evidence, you have to investigate the facts, right?
Correct.
In order to have the evidence, the facts need to be investigated. Due process needs to happen. Due process is not happen because, quite frankly, a lot of what our administrators and what they're doing is done arbitrarily. Let me just tell you what arbitrary is. It's based on random choice or personal whim rather than any reason or system. Another explanation they give for definition for arbitrary is of power of a ruling body, unrestrained and autocratic in the use of authority. Too many things in the governance of our church right now is being done arbitrarily. Now, let me continue. It says, he who has placed upon men the responsibility of leaders and teachers of his people will hold the people accountable for the manner in which they treat his servants.
Mercy.
It's important for these guys to understand as they're not going through the due process, as they are trying and convicting this guy arbitrarily. He's not had a chance. They've not had a chance to speak for themselves. And I'm going to say something here that I'm sitting in the same position right now. There are things that I could say, but right now I am giving these men an opportunity. I've put appeal into them, written appeals, to do things the right way. And I'm restraining saying thing about it. But I know what Ronkelly and Conrad Vine are going through to be true where they're at, because I'm dealing with the same thing where I'm at.
Mercy.
But I'm waiting. I'm doing the right thing, going through the process, giving them a chance to give me a chance. And so far it's crickets, but I'll keep praying. And at some point, maybe if they don't do what they should do and still base what they're doing just arbitrarily because they want to do it, we may have to go a different direction.
Wow.
Okay, I'll be quiet.
No, you're good.
I'll
Thank
add
you
to
so
that
much.
too. I think one of the biggest concerns, and one thing I admire about the Village Church and others, is that normally the congregation and those that observe, we sit back and we watch these types of overstepping of power take place, and we don't say anything. When, to be completely honest with you, when we allow one man or a few men or a committee of men to act contrary to what is written, and we are aware that what's happening to some degree is not in accordance to what's right, what's written in the word, and we stand back and we don't say anything, that empowers that type of behavior, and it's repeated with more aggression the next go around. And because this has been taking place for so many years, it's become very comfortable now for men to do things that Brother James is bringing out and what we see done with Conrad and Vine. So this platform right here, I believe, is so important. And I know people tend to get a little bit unnerved because it's not natural to stand up against those that have titles and positions, but it's necessary because it prevents future acts of, I would say, tyranny. And we can't allow wrongs to be done without standing up and saying, hey, you know what? We're going to hold you accountable. We see what's being done. It's clear, and we don't agree with it, and we're not going to allow it. And until we start taking that type of stand, this behavior is only going to get worse. in both the religious and the civil sector. It's not going to get better.
Brother Brian, I think you made a good point in balancing what Pastor James Mylan said. Like, it does make you wonder how many more cases like this has been going on, but never got addressed publicly, neither the attention. We know the villagers need a church because of who they were and what they've done and how much, they were respected in even a circle. And we know Ron Kelly and Dr. Vine, these are big names. But what about the little guys who are not big names? What about those small churches where pastors get kicked to the curb and these guys never got advocated for? And it's sad. And that's why I think speaking about these issues matter, because they are setting a very, very negative precedence that it's been said, I will say. It's been said. This is not like a new thing. But it's like they are more bold with it now. It's public. And there's no shame when it comes to some of this as well. And there's no respect for the souls. And I think this is where I'm more burdened than anything is when it comes to souls. It's almost like it doesn't matter if we have to burn an entire church down, an institution down, and impact the medical institution. It doesn't matter how many lives were destroyed in the process of us getting the one man we wanted to get. We will do it. And that to me is the one that really bothers me. Like, what about the souls? What about the work of the Lord that we oftentimes speak about? It seems like that doesn't matter when it comes to judging and getting whoever that they want to get rid of. That to me bothers me.
And
Absolutely.
James,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
no, just real quick. I'll say this: the little men, it has, and this is a fact. It's not imaginary. This has been going on for years, and that's why when people start talking about Matthew 18 and this and that, before the power of social media, you could easily circumvent and get around a lot of these things that the Bible says you should do, and the processes that the scriptures put in place so that we don't have this type of bad behavior. But social media now has at least allowed a platform to where these things can be addressed, and now men can be held accountable. So it's not negative. It's not a critical of the church type of situation when the right approach is being taken, such as how Advent Media is approaching this. When these things, when they're addressed the right way, then a lot of that evil can be held in check. Now, we know ultimately it's going to go full blast. It's not going to stop. The church that do not fear Jehovah, they are going to unite with the state, and there's going to be a reemergence of persecution. We can't get around that. But in the process, before these things happen, we should sound our voices as loud as we can against these type of things to hold in check while the message that God has given us can complete the work that God has ordained for it to complete.
Yeah. We're about mission, right? We're about winning souls to what? The truth.
Right.
Now, in order to do that, what are we winning people to? Sometimes we have to clean up our own house, because if we're telling people this is the truth, this is the true church, this is the way to go, we need to look inward and clean our own house up first. So there is a place, a safe place that you can truly win people to. And that's what this is. This is just part of the process of mission. This is the ugly part of mission that has to be done, because unfortunately we have things going on in our church that, case in point, brought a man into the church. Everything we believe, the Sabbath, stay dead. He was like, yes, 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 I get that. But then he got to see the ugly side of church politics. He got to see administrators not following the Bible in their process of doing things. And he's like, wait a minute. This is the truth, but what you guys are doing here, these leaders, what they're doing is not right. It's not even biblical. And it's very difficult for him to stick around. So, hey, unfortunately, we have to have these conversations. It's not about trying to tear anybody down. It's trying to get our church where it needs to be so the mission can be very powerful.
Amen. Amen. Could it also be true? Would you guys maybe respond to that? Is it because due process is being violated? Is it because these men realize that they don't have a case, or they don't have, because if you have solid evidence on your side My logical conclusion is, yeah, bring it to the table, right? Bring it before the church. We are told in Matthew 18, and let it be examined by the people so that they can come to a conclusion of whether or not the man is guilty and how they plan to deal with that guilty man is also left to the church board and their members as well. The business board have to even vote on that idea. But my question now is, maybe it's because they don't have a case. Maybe it's because if they really had a case against Dr. Vine to really want to let the world see how guilty of a man he is, they would have brought it up, because it's been done against other men like, Pippin and all these other guys who were cut up and they had solid evidence, and that was brought before the church and people say he's got to go. But now, maybe the reason they do not want to follow the process is because their position is erroneous and they know they cannot win the argument. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, and oftentimes and I've heard many people say it's hidden behind, employer, we don't want to say this out of line, in case of a pastor. Let's use ronkelly instead of Conrad Vine. This is employer-employee confidentiality, and we don't want to say anything. So they hide behind that a lot of time and allow you to assume there's something worse than what there is. And they don't want it to get out there. Now, my understanding here is Ronkelly and Conrad Vine both are fine with it being laid out on the table to be discussed, the truth to come out. Why not then? Because it's actually about both those men, right? So if they want it to get out there, it should get out there and be discussed and let everybody see. That's fair.
All right.
Yeah, in many cases, there's an agenda that a single individual or a few may have that are in positions of a power, and when that's questioned, circumvented, or when they see an individual is a threat to whatever that agenda is, whether it's right or wrong, at that point they become a target. So it's easy to manipulate. Being in an office where you have the power, it's easy to sway, manipulate, and stack the cards when you're trying to paint a particular picture to the people so that you can get rid of this person with little damage control as possible. And unfortunately, no one wants to really talk about that, but that's what's going on. There's an agenda and a policy, and nothing will be permitted to interfere with that. And when it is interfered with, that's when you start seeing these type of underhanded type of tactics taken in order to silence the voice.
Wow.
I posted something the other day here, and this is really, it says the minute force, deception, or falsehood is used in the process of doing God's work, it is no longer God's work, but instead a counterfeit of the enemy.
Mercy. Yeah. I'll tell you what, to the credit of Pastor Ronkelly, he has not changed his position on things. I love men. He doesn't, he's not like a reed in the wind kind of thing. Like, he's been saying the same thing. His message has been very consistent. I actually respect that. I see that to be a man of integrity. These are the kind of people I stand by. Like, he's calling for one thing the whole time, due process. And I think the Village SDA Church, they do have to consider, because there is a meeting coming up. Well, there was supposed to be one on June 17th, which is being canceled by, I guess, Elder Chem Mitchell didn't want to go on. I got some people giving me information and stuff that it's best not to mention any name. But that meeting was supposed to be Dr. Vine and Jim Mitchell was supposed to have a open discussion on his position about some of his claims, and that was canceled by Jim Mitchell. But the church is, by the way, the Village SDA Church is still fighting, and they plan on reinstating Dr. Vine to his full authority and position to function as an elder in the church. That is actually something to behold. That is a move right there that I would say we have to respect that. So yes, they lost Ronkelly because he was an employer of the conference. They had no choice when it comes to which direction he goes as far as working for the conference. But Dr. Vine belongs to them as an elder. They ordained Dr. Vine. They have every right to determine where he goes from there. They have to make the judgment. It is not left. And I really want to see how the Michigan Conference deal with that situation. I want to see how far will they go to get Dr. Vine, because when Kelly is out of the picture, like, will they go even farther to the point where they disband that church to get Dr. Vine? We don't know. We're gonna wait. So that's just my perspective on that.